We waste a lot of damn energy trying to be appropriate. Man, you give people latitude to be their authentic selves, the collective gonna come together better, man. I probably do have a talent for understanding people, but is it a talent? It's not. It's listening when they talking.
Put that coffee down.
Creators are leaders. Be careful what kind of leaders you're producing here.
Helen, we're both in sales. Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
They realized that to be in power, you didn't need guns or money or even numbers. You just needed the will to do what the other guy wouldn't.
I'm not leaving. The show goes on.
Mr. Jon Vaughan, welcome back to the show. I really look forward to these, and something tells me that I shouldn't tell you that because I get so excited and I feel like you're going to make me feel smaller as a person because I've told you how excited I am, but I am. I'm excited you're here.
Well, I'm excited to be here too. I always enjoy these conversations, especially in the heat of the August summer and you wearing a flannel shirt. So
I made a commitment to several listeners of this show that I wouldn't talk as much because they pointed out when you have Jon Vaughan on, who's smart and they want to listen to you, I get excited and I want to be part of it and I talk too much. I've made the commitment to talk less. So I'm going to say to that cheap shot to start off another episode with you regarding my flannel shirt is no comment. Let's just keep it moving.
Keep it rolling. Keep it rolling.
Have you seen, perchance, this Pete Rose documentary that came out? I think it's on HBO.
You've told me about it. I have not gotten the chance to see it yet.
So I will say this, and I would like to get kind of your thoughts on just what is happening. You and I think, share similar views on gambling, and not in and of itself as a moral activity, but that's part of it. More the business decision to go after it. What I will say is we're, I think, 4 episodes in, and I'm watching it with my 12-year-old son. And through the original highlights, or the first 5 minutes, he says to me, I want a custom Pete Rose jersey. And I said, okay, why don't we just watch this? You take in the storytelling, and then later you can tell me if you still want that. At the end of the first episode, he says, Dad, I don't think I want that jersey. And I said, well, good. I didn't order it just yet. Yeah. So, but I will tell you, it does a good job of encapsulating the problematic history of Pete Rose and gambling. And what are your thoughts just in terms of all the advertising and everybody going all in on all 4 major sports, whether it's hockey, baseball, basketball, and certainly the NFL?
Growing up, for us, it was sports gambling bad. Not just bad, like one of the 7 deadly sins, right? So much so that Pete Rose even being attached to it means that he is gone forever. And Major League Baseball will never back off of that. I don't believe as long as Pete Rose is alive, they're ever going to back off of that. And then at the same time, when they started to see the success of FanDuel and things like FanDuel, they said, whoa, there's money to be made here. And then you see ESPN has not just gambling advice, but their own gambling site. You have all these sports teams being sponsored by these gambling sites. And no surprise, when you insert that into the environments of these sports, you're seeing more and more players suspended for gambling. I mean, as an Atlanta guy, Calvin Ridley, who was playing great for us, all of a sudden disappears into another state, comes back and gets suspended for a year because he was doing sports gambling. And they don't have the education. He thought that if he drove out of the state, because Georgia's not a sports gambling state, and he made bets in Tennessee, that doesn't count. And so comes back and then loses a year because of that. And there's just like the surprise in the commentators' voices when these young, all of a sudden wealthy athletes are getting suspended for sports gambling when they're advertising it everywhere is the biggest piece of hypocritical nonsense I've ever seen.
I couldn't agree more. And you watched this Pete Rose documentary, and that's what you were thinking. And it's HBO, so there are no commercials. But you and I know damn well, if there were commercials, they would be gambling commercials. And I keep thinking about one of the previous podcasts, I made this recommendation of this tiny little book called The Basic Laws of Human Stupidity. And they draw the distinction between a bandit that causes other people harm for their profits, which is currently we'll just look at the NFL because they're going to be victims in the largest way because there's 53 guys per team and they're non-guaranteed contracts. But that's a bandit. So we're going to cause other people harm, but we're going to make a lot of money. That is what's currently happening with the league. However, stupidity is when we're causing other people harm while we're harming ourselves. And if you look in the history of the NFL, Rooney, the original Art Rooney Sr., the original founder of the Steelers, his main job was gambling. And then Mara, whatever his real name, it wasn't Wellington, Wellington's dad of the Giants, he was a professional gambler. Like that is how they started. And them and George Halas came together and said, this can never be part of the game because it will take this down. And that happened multiple times in the history of the NFL. And unfortunately, sooner or later, we're going to have a huge debacle and people are going to be citing that. And it's just, again, I think it's stupid.
Well, what it does is they care about the money that comes in. They don't really care about the ancillary challenges, the collateral damage that happens. Like 25 to 35-year-olds right now are having, it was 2.5 million U.S. citizens or U.S. adults are severely addicted to gambling, up something like 2,000% from 2018, which is when they started allowing sports gambling in mass in all of these states, which leads to suicide rates higher, bankruptcy rates higher, all these sorts of things but it brings money into the league and we need more money in the league. So it's just this like false equivalency of what's moral and what's not and what they allow into the game and what they don't. And Pete Rose sitting on the sideline being like, do y'all remember me, the hits leader, like Charlie Hustle? I'd still like to be a part.
No, nothing to see here, Pete. All right, but that is not what we're talking about here today. No. You and I have been talking about this Mike Tomlin episode from another podcast called the Pivot Podcast that is hosted by 3 former NFL guys, Ryan Clark, who you'll see on ESPN, really sharp guy, Fred Taylor, and Channing Crowder. And Crowder, I believe, went to Alabama, and Fred Taylor, I'm quite certain, I think he won that national championship with Florida, right?
I don't want to hear about that. Skip.
Danny Werfel.
Skip.
So he was on, and I listened to it, and I sent it to you immediately, and I said, this is just a masterclass in leadership. And for those of you who might not know Mike Tomlin, he attended the College of William and Mary. He was an all-conference player there, not good enough for the NFL, joined the NFL, had a bunch of stints at different teams around the NFL until he got the head coaching job in 2007. How many losing seasons has Mike Tomlin had?
The same amount that you and I have combined as head coaches in the NFL.
Correct. That is just stunning to me. And so that is 17 consecutive years of non-losing seasons. And the only coaches in NFL history who have longer stretches are 19, Bill Belichick, and 21, Tom Landry. And neither of those guys started their streak the very first year in the league.
They all had losing seasons at some point in their coaching. Belichick's was on the front end. I think Landry's had him on the front end as well. But, I mean, starts, takes over a franchise, and has not had a losing season since, including years where he has had Kenny Pickett as his quarterback.
Regardless of what NFL team you root for, including said Patriots, the idea that year in, year out, injuries, free agency, there's so many variables that he can take your team and he can probably have a winning season. He can take his team, have a winning season. He's that good of a coach. So what we're going to do here, John, is play.
Well, the standard is the standard.
Standard is the standard. And what does that mean?
The standard is the standard. He says that a lot of the podcast. He says it a lot in his coaching is it doesn't matter what players we have. It doesn't matter who we're facing. It does, like the standard is the standard. We're going to hold ourselves to a standard that we hold ourselves to. We don't care what anybody else holds themselves to. Our standard is winning. The game is football. The business is winning. And we're going to hold ourselves to that standard.
That's his job to, at minimum, be above 500.
Yep.
Otherwise, the goal is to win the Super Bowl. That is the standard. I don't really care who we've got. I don't care where we're drafting. I don't care about the injuries. I don't care who's holding out. That is the standard. And I think what you will hear when you listen to this, and then John, more so than me, will add some color and some commentary to how it ties back to what we do and his experience in leadership roles in the construction industry. I can't urge you more to listen to the entirety of this, but we've pulled out a couple gems. This is clip number 1.
I think that to have that honor and to be as consistent as you have been, you know, how do you stay motivated? Because y'all get paid well, you know, but what motivation? Is it the player? Is it the Lombardi trophies? I mean, what is it? Each and every year, year in, year out.
The men I work with, man. Coaching is real simple to me, man. You help players realize their dreams. You help them feed their families. And then in turn, you eat.
Right.
And so how do I stay motivated, man? Them men I'm working with change every year. And there's extreme urgency in the playing game, right? And I just think we do a disrespect to the dudes that play when we as coaches don't share that same urgency, man. Like, when I came into it, Tony hired me at 28. I had John Lynch, Rondy Barber, Brian Kelly, Dexter Jackson, dudes like that in my meeting room. And I was the same age as those guys. Lynch was 9 months older than me. And so, like, I did not want to let them dudes down. The whole nature of our relationship was my ability to help them dudes prepare and bring that daily.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I understood that. I had no resume that they could appreciate. You know what I'm saying? I had no reputation that they could appreciate. And so I came in there every day with kind of an edge of how am I going to deliver for these dudes? How am I going to deliver these dudes to a stadium, man, and how are they going to play great?
Right.
And I just did that so long, man, it became habit. And as I established a resume, I didn't change that work pattern. I didn't change that mentality because it was a new set of bodies. Dwight Smith need that from me.
Right.
Jermaine Phillips need that from me. I get a D coordinator job in Minnesota. Twan Winfield need that from me. Pat and Kevin Williams need that from me. And so on and so forth. I just think that I came into this thing fighting every day to prove I belong, to help them dudes eat. And so that's just a mentality that endured for me.
Do you still feel that way?
Absolutely.
You still feel like you got to prove yourself? Bro, you got championships.
Man, I don't care about that. Like,
every day you walk into that, you leave this big ass house because we in your basement. And I ain't even been to the 4th floor yet. But you walk in, still to this day, bro. You walk in and you think you had to prove yourself.
I create comforts for my wife and kids, man. I just lay my head down here until it's time to go to work the next damn day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I resist comfort. I ask my guys to resist comfort, right? Guys that played for me, they can tell you. One of my sayings, I got a lot of sayings, is don't seek comfort. Seeking comfort is a natural human condition, right? We all want to be comfortable. I realize if you're going to have special outcomes, that you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah. And so I've just trained myself over the years to resist comfort. And so appreciating my resume is seeking comfort. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I get my ass whipped, and I say, but my resume is such and such.
I'm still a Super Bowl champ.
Yeah, that's seeking comfort.
Yeah.
Like, those that love us most in our business, they do the best job of helping us seek comfort, right? I come into this house, man, and I lose a home game, and my mama's sitting in the kitchen, and she talking about the refs did us wrong, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Mom, get out of here with that. I don't need that. It stings my ears. I've trained myself to hate it because hating it keeps me upright, keeps our program upright. That's just a mode of operation that I'm comfortable with. I can't allow myself to do that. You know, I think if I did, I think those that I lead would see it. And that's not what I'm about. That's not what I stand before the men and talk about on a daily basis. And if I talk about it, damn it, I got to live it.
So, Jon, there are so many different things that I would love to get your opinion on what stands out the most when you listen to that?
Helping others achieve dreams. Like that is the baseline of what he said there is like, my job is to let these other dudes eat. Like being able to figure out what is it that puts them in the best position to win, support them in that, coach them in that, and then allow them to go out there and do that. Like our job is not to come in as leaders and start dictating what people's dreams need to be or dictating what their path needs to be. So many times we get in their way by saying, oh, I see Bradley has the ability to go be an operations manager. I'm going to push him to be that operations manager, not have that conversation. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I want to be a sales manager. What are you talking about? And we've pushed somebody towards a dream that they don't buy into. You know, and I just heard something else recently about expectations. And what Tomlin talks about is that he understands people's expectations. He doesn't go to a place where expectations are unconscious, unreasonable, unspoken, and not mutually agreed upon. He goes into this process to say, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm conscious about understanding what their dreams are. And he talks about that. He talks about, I want to make sure it's spoken. So I'm going to go sit down with Antoine Winfield, Pat Kelly, or Pat Williams and Kevin Williams and understand what they want to do. And then we're going to mutually agree on what are we going to do. And then now expectations together are set, and they're going to help them get that edge and not seek comfort and get to where they want to be. I mean, and he just really talks about that so beautifully, and the fact that he's not going out there and talking to hear, just waiting to hear from them so they can stop talking. He can start giving them the feedback, what they want to hear. That he's really listening and understanding where they want to go. Now, obviously, he's got the job to go out and win, but you take this mission, this overall mission of the organization, and you take the dreams of the players that are underneath it, and then you push them together in a way that makes them follow that path towards success together.
What were those four? You said unconscious, unspoken. What was the third one?
Unreasonable.
Unreasonable.
And not mutually agreed upon.
I'm writing that down just because I think that's very poignant. And you're right. Expectations, I mean, they're everything. Right? How are we coming together, and what are we trying to do, and are we seeing the vision the same way? This was the quote that jumped out at me. The whole nature of our relationship was my ability to help them dudes prepare and bring that daily. Over the years, and normally it's after I've listened to this, I will often talk to, it's often a project manager, a sales manager of some sort. And if there's someone underperforming, and if we've identified this player, we'll call it this person as a problem, I will simply say, what definitively have you done to help this person? And what I'm not talking about is, let's just give me a 5,000 word monologue about all the things and ways you work together. I'm talking about a plan and specific things that you said, I have given them these tools and this training to help them. But a lot of times we haven't, and it's easier, and this is something we'll talk about here, of seeking comfort, but it's easier to say, well, it's their problem. And how can we run to coaching and knowing that leadership, man, that's the thing. That's the whole thing here.
And so many times leaders can blame turnover on human resources or the hiring manager and be like, man, y'all just got the wrong people. You're not giving me anything to work with here. And it's like, I don't know, if there's talented people leading your organization on a regular basis, more often than not, you're not really leading and coaching them. You know, he talks about looking at scouting reports and being like, oh, this guy's got bad hand placement. He's like, that ain't talent, that's coaching. If we don't need good coaches, then why are we even here? Like if we had everybody that had good hand movement, good foot movement, hand placement, ball movement, strong arm, all these sorts of things, there's no need for a head coach. Like we're here to take the talent and form it and then make them into what they need to be. And so when we lose talented people because we didn't coach them, and then we look at human resources or a hiring manager and say, y'all got to step up your game. It's like, no, let's put a mirror up first.
Mm-hmm. Well, it just had me thinking about me and my own organization when we're, consulting for clients, whatever we're doing, or we're helping other people who sell, full stop. Either you're helping other people do what they're trying to do to achieve their dreams, or you're not. And if we're not sure, that means you're not. And if we can't either on either side of that relationship say, when I work with Jon, he helps me do this better, faster, makes me feel better, makes me feel more confident. But if we're not quite sure, you're not. And I think that's probably the hardest thing here, is just understanding for them in the NFL every Sunday, that secondary is either performing well and preventing touchdowns or they're not. And everybody has to look. Any advice, Jon, for us when a lot of these, our performance, it isn't public, and in some cases it's harder to measure?
Yeah. And so a lot of times, like the way I think about it is so many managers, so many leaders, so many people in positions of supervisory roles, like they're trying to have good culture by being nice. And being nice and being kind are so different. Being nice is not telling them that they're not doing the job. Being nice is not telling them that they're not creating connections, relationships, doing things the right way. Being kind is saying, you're not doing this well, and I'm going to help you understand how to do it well, because otherwise we got to go in a different direction. And so when you're not having these conversations that are about process and relationship and things like that, the outcomes show later. And so having the nice conversation and then just firing them because they're not doing the job, you're going to continue to see these problems downstream that are resulting in the visible performances, the visible revenue and operating expense and all these things like that, where when you're really fixing it at the source and you're having these kind relationships to make sure that people understand their behaviors and that creates outcomes downstream. That's where I think we fail as leaders sometimes. And I'm raising my hand because I've done that a lot of times over the years. Is I either don't have the time, or I don't have the energy, or I don't have the courage in this particular moment to have this conversation. And then downstream, it really just hurts you.
When you hear the phrase, don't seek comfort, does anything come to mind where maybe it's something you were doing or a phrase that you heard, either looking back or currently, where you would think in that moment, they were seeking comfort, and this is what it sounded like?
Oh, for sure. I mean, measuring operational performance, it's hard to find a good measurement for whatever it is, OTIF, True Scorecard, whatever, around how are you performing. And so what we would do is it would be this soft, like, oh, well, our sales aren't going down, so of course our operations is doing fine, or we're still profitable, so our ops is doing fine, or operating expense is fine, because you can use all kinds of metrics to say operations is doing fine. But until you really do the hard, courageous, uncomfortable work of getting in there and defining what success looks like and holding people to that standard. That's what I think accountability is defining success, holding people to the standard, is like you're just guessing, right? And you're using false indicators to measure how you're performing as a business. But getting in there and really saying, okay, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of if we have a back order, what was the true reason behind it? If we have something that didn't go within, it was a first out and it got there at noon, what happened there? If we had a misorder, if we had a special order, because sometimes the discomfort is going to a customer and being like, you have given us orders and delivery times 10 times, and we showed up and your job site's not ready and we brought it back. So whether you're going to do a $0 invoice like you've advocated for, but they're not going to change their behaviors until you have those conversations, or you have an inside salesperson who may not be trained. I mean, that goes back to the coaching. It's a hand placement issue. It's like, when we never taught them how to order windows properly with jams and with locking back, and like, what are we making sure that we're giving them a resource to understand appropriately? But we're just blaming them because they're the source of all these issues. But if you're not measuring it, you're not seeing trends. And that's the discomforting work that it takes to be courageous. And we just don't do that well in our industry.
Yeah. Well, I use this just recently. I feel lucky and blessed to work with this company and this individual who we have a really strong relationship.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, somebody else?
It was definitely somebody else. Somebody else who had the capability to pay me in real time. So when you get back to work, let me know. No, not really. And he said to me, and he's a sales leader, and he said pretty casually, he's like, yeah, we're down. They were down like 9% year over year. And he's like, man, it's permits are down. It's labor short. It's mortgage rates are high. He's like, and I just said, hey man, I mean, it's one thing if a salesperson says, when sales are up, it's because I'm awesome and I work my ass off. And then sales go down. I'm like, what do you want me to do? It's the market. I can't control the Fed. What do you want me to do? And I said, it's one thing if a salesperson does it, but I said, if you as a sales leader are making those same comments, number one, to me, I'm not going to accept that. You guys told me that you deliberately do not want your sales to go down regardless of your market because you see the potential and you have the talent. But I said, you're seeking comfort right now. And he goes, what? What was that? And I said, I'll send you the link. Listen right here. But those sorts of comments are like, what are you going to do? You know, environmental factors, market forces. I can't do anything. Okay. But that's just a blanket statement that we can use that allows us to make us feel better about the position that we're in.
Well, it's a fundamental attribution error, which fundamental attribution error is other people are late to a meeting because they're lazy and they don't plan and they're just not a very good person. I'm late to a meeting because it just was wild. Traffic was worse than it ever has been. And I couldn't control that my dog was sick and throwing up. And then my kid called and I had to turn around and bring the retainer back. But I'm not a bad person. I'm not lazy. It's just, that was environmental. And so that's what, like, the market's down and that's why we're down. But the market, and when we were doing great, it's because we were great salespeople. Like, it's that piece that's like, that's the fundamental attribution error side of it. In my mind, that's the same thing as seeking comfort.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into this next clip. We're talking about culture building and digging in just a little bit more to really help people achieve dreams.
Why were you so comfortable going and getting that? Like, why could you talk to him in that aspect?
Mike T talked to me and tell me anything he wanted to as a coach because as my friend, he always treated me a certain way.
How can I deny what I know?
Yeah.
Right.
Because I put a whistle around my neck? I desire to create a culture and atmosphere where first and foremost, people can be themselves. We got a job to do. Right. Football's our game, our business is winning. Okay, so we all know what the job is. Right. But there's latitude to be the individuals that you are in the midst of that. And it's okay. We waste a lot of damn energy trying to be appropriate sometimes. Mm-hmm. Man, you give people latitude to be their authentic selves. Like, the collective gonna come together better, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's gonna be the moments that we can sit around like this and tell a story. But like, there's gonna be so many more moments, man, where that dude gonna give of himself to the cause. This dude right here, his willingness to give of himself to our cause, I can't give him 5 minutes to snap every now and then. Yeah. In all likelihood, the snap is warranted in some way.
Right.
You know, or he's legitimately being irritated in some way that I recognize. His whole thing was, don't insult his intelligence.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna lead men, you gotta know them, right? You gotta know them. And you better know that about this dude. Shoot him straight, don't insult his intelligence, and he'll do the rest. But like, we make the simple complex.
Right.
This dude needs information. I was probing him. I'd give you this story, and I'm not gonna tell RC stories. I'm not gonna tell RC.
I texted him and told him no RC stories.
I want to
tell
give me all the RC stories you got.
But like, my whole thing was, I'm like, man, this dude is forged his career, man. He's undrafted. He done got himself in a couple different circumstances, man. He is on the NFL map, blah, 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 blah. And so the first time I meet him, I said, hey, man, my goal for you is to no longer be a journeyman, man. I want you, when this ball is said and done, man, I want you to connect with this experience me and you about to share. You're going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler for life. Like, the journeyman stuff is over. And every now and then when I wanted to touch him, I call him a journeyman.
I used to hate that jump, bro. Like, he used to be, what's up, journeyman? I was like, hey, bro, stop playing.
But you knew.
Trigger. That's the trigger.
Yeah.
That's the trigger.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to know that I know. I'm not going to touch it in a real way.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like, that dude needed a place to hang his hat, man.
Right.
Like, he needed a place to call home, man. Like, when it's over and said and done, man, like, he had been on many organizations, but what organization was he going to connect with? I wanted him to connect with the experience that we was going to share. And so I just want to talk openly about it. I want to talk about the elephant in the room. And then me and him could go about the business of working together, chasing these W's.
Yep.
Right.
If you're going to lead, you better have intimate relationships, and you better be open to intimate relationships like that.
Right.
What makes a man tick? What's his fear? What's his motivation?
Jon Vaughn, what stands out?
Man, I just love the way that he talks about using the talent they have and using them in the way that fits what they do. It's like understanding who they are. What is the triggers that push them? So many businesses want to take their people and make them fit into a mold of a job description and a position description and all these sorts of things that fit within the 9-box, perfectly, right? But in the reality is, if you put somebody in a position, you put Ryan Clark at safety, he's going to be a great safety. You put him in middle linebacker, he's going to look like he's terrible. And you're also putting people in the right cultures as much as the right position, because a lot of times oppressive cultures with somebody in the right position is still not going to see them thrive. But building cultures where people feel heard and listened to, who are you? Where did you come from? What do you want? Like those 3 questions that he really talks about, it's like, that's what's going to get you to get the best out of people. And so you see year in and year out, it's not that the Pittsburgh Steelers have better draft analysts and scouts than anybody else. They keep picking the right guys. Is that causative or correlative? Like they're picking guys that they know they can put in positions to win, and they have a culture that's not oppressive that allows them to do it. But you bring somebody in and you put them in a position that says, hey, you need to run your business and all you're worried about is operational leverage or OpEx or all these sorts of things. And it's somebody who does sales and culture building and galvanizing and all those sorts of things. It's like, no. We're not worried about that. We're worried about, there are people that are unbelievable at coming in, identifying operational leverage potential, minimizing operational expense, maximizing productivity, and they're going to be really good at that. But you bring somebody in who's better at galvanizing culture creation, growth, those sorts of things, they're going to die in that culture. And so it's building the culture that attracts the kind of people that you want to help you win. And then it's understanding those 3 questions. Who are you? Where did you come from? What do you want? And then building in the coaching around that to get them to where they want to be.
Who are they? Where do they come from? What do they want? And that kind of goes back to that first clip, which is, can we help them with whatever that is? And I think if we can take that approach, again, I think you're going to expand your leadership capabilities there.
And I also think the way that Tomlin talks about leading Ryan Clark, he does it several times throughout. He talks about, he gigs him by calling him a journeyman. And Ryan Clark could take it. It motivated him. It pushed him. It did the things that got him to where he was. Well, you may do that to somebody else. You may do that to Troy Polamalu and him be like, just shut down in that. And so understanding your people and being able to lead them and encourage them or poke and prod them in the right way, that's all about knowing them. But if you just are running a playbook of do what I say, then you're never going to get to that point to understand how to motivate people appropriately.
All right, let's jump into this next clip. This is all about listening and the role of the leader.
Some guys don't know how to lead men. They just come in there and rah, just to get these checks. And that's the business. That's the way some players play. They don't care about championship. I'm gonna make as much money as I can and go and take care of my people. If that's your motivation, that's okay. That's your motivation. But some guys actually want to go and be a part of something great forever, and they'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. But you seem to genuinely do that, and your guys reciprocate that. Not all coaches have that, but you do. You're a psychologist too.
I wish.
You say you know what his buttons were.
I probably do have a talent for understanding people, but is it a talent? It's not. Like, it's listening when they talking. For real. Coaches like to think we listen. Coaches don't listen. They wait for dudes' mouths to stop moving.
That's what I was just trying to say.
I sensed that as a player, and I hated it. And so I just try to be what I wanted leading me. And so when dudes are talking, I listen. And I listen for real. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to produce action that's in alignment with what they want. But I listen. I try to keep it real simple. you know. And it's difficult to do, obviously, because it's a lot of variables at play and stuff. And this is ball at its highest level and all that comes with it. But it's still ball. Right. So that's why he kills me, people kill me for catchphrases, but I'm trying to capture a thought succinctly without damn talking too much. Because I just hate talking. I'd rather do. And so that's why I come up with the phrase, football's our game, our business is winning.
Yeah.
Because I can go to that, and if I go to it enough, people know what I'm saying, and I don't have to talk all day.
Right.
There's certain business-oriented things that come with what we do at this level that we all understand. And so let's not hide from it. Let's not hide behind it. There's a business component to this thing, and when we win in the business is being handled, and when you're not, it's not. And then there's the game of football. And that's the game that we all played as young people that we all loved, and then we went on this football journey. And there's a component of it that the business can't touch.
Right, yeah, yeah.
The business will never touch. And the men that been inside them locker rooms and stuff understand that. And so I like to acknowledge both exist. I like to fight the daily struggle of managing both components of what it is that we do.
Jon, there's so much here that I love. I'm going to start with this, though. People kill me for catchphrases, but I'm trying to capture a thought succinctly without damn talking too much. Do you have any key catchphrases at the office, around the house, historically, any ones you were using and then discarded, any new ones you've picked up? Talk to me about catchphrases.
So there was a list of Johnisms over time, but it was intentional. Like I've always said, I'm corny, but I'm effective, because I'm going to say the same thing over and over and over and over again. Because, you know, Petrucci writes about it, unless people hear you say something 7 times, they don't believe it to be true. Because you can say, oh, sales is most important. Oh, gross margin is most important. Oh, OPEX is most important. Oh, EBITDA is most important. Oh, net profit's most important. Oh, net working capital is most important. And when it just changes all the time, then people don't believe the next thing that you say is really important. So I said ownership, accountability, responsibility over and over and over and over again. I said accountability to me means defining what success looks like and holding people to that standard. I'd say that over and over and over again. We want to talk about I like, I wish, I wonder. What do we like about what we do? What do I wish we did differently? And what do I wonder we could be? And what is it going to take us to get there? So, I mean, I used to do the Brand Vaughan mission statement: to deliver extra mile service, leave a positive impression through our commitment to the principle, strength lies with that. And I'd say it so much that I could walk into a room and I'd be like, all right, who's got the best impression? And they would do this like hair twist and arms together and standing up and my inflection. But like, it's corny, but I said corny, but effective. He says, I just don't want to talk that much. Like, I think it's the same thing. It's people want to believe that what you say is meaningful and true. And it's just not whatever pops into your head in the moment, that it's thoughtful and it's intentional and strategic. And you're not just some, flavor of the month type thought that comes into your head. And that's what he's done. Football is a game, winning is our business. Like, I get it. I connect with it. And so if he said it again, I would know exactly what he meant. So it's really easy to make the simple complex. Making the complex simple is what gives leaders the ability to communicate well.
Yeah, I had never connected these two things that I know to be true, is that leaders often get bored with their message long before it starts changing the habits and the behaviors and overall the culture of the organization. And I will kind of remind myself that, and I'll remind the folks we work with of that. And then kind of the corollary that a mentor of mine said, he said, yeah, it's not really effective unless they are rolling their eyes and finishing your sentences. And I hadn't really connected it with this idea of catchphrases. You had ownership, something, and accountability. What was it? What was the second one?
Ownership, accountability, responsibility through the principle, strength lies with that.
Got it.
If you take that, you take the first letter, it's OARS, oars, row the boat. It all ties. They've heard that a million times. Ownership, accountability, responsibility, strength lies within. Oars, row the boat. Let's go. Row in the same direction.
Let's go to this last clip, and which I love. It's all about vulnerability and intimacy.
It's cool just to hear that you said that you walked down the hallway to Rooney's office That's how it happens?
That's how it happened.
You can walk down to the owner and tell him, I want this, and he'll either yay or nay.
Absolutely.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. And
Absolutely.
that makes decisions.
Absolutely.
That's not how it is around the league. It can't be.
Like I've said before, man, we make the simple complex in this business, don't we?
Yeah.
We overthink things. We insulate ourselves with infrastructure in the effort to feel good about the decisions that we make because we're scared.
Right.
I like the transparency and the clarity in which we work because more than anything, you know, it lets me know that we feel like we are capable and we are not scared.
That goes to trust and transparency. You have a track record that shows that. Even when your players buying in and willing to do whatever for you. I'm pretty sure it's the same with the ownership, the people in the front office, that you're not gonna jeopardize the organization for as successful as you guys have been.
They know I'm gonna give it back, bro.
Right.
They know I'm gonna give it back. Whatever I got to give, they gonna get.
Right.
I don't have any problem fighting for that dude because I know he gonna fight for us. And maybe the reason he fights for us is because he knows that we're gonna fight for him. But like, that's relationships, that's life. Somebody got to be all in for everybody to be all in. And so when you're in a position of leadership, man, shouldn't you own the initial component of that?
Right.
I'm gonna be willing to show you before I expect you to reciprocate.
Right.
I'm in the position of leadership in the relationship. And so I just think that's my mindset. I'm open to intimacy, but at the same time, I realize that I'm not gonna have intimate relationships with everybody. Everybody don't want intimate relationships with me. Everybody not comfortable with intimate relationships with me, but everybody knows I'm open. And some people take advantage of it. And so then we end up with something that's cool, that's beyond our professional relationship, that lasts a lifetime, like me and my bro right here. But it doesn't always come to that, and it doesn't have to. But as a leader, I better let it be known that I'm open.
Right.
Because you can't do ordinary stuff, man, and expect unique results. That don't make sense. We can't have ordinary relationships. I coach, you play. Do this, good job, bad job, and expect, like, the end of our journey for the confetti to be raining down on us. Mm-hmm. Nah, man, what we chasing is scarcity to that. Right. Like, it's scarcity to that. And so you better be willing to do unique things in order to expect unique results. And that's just life. And so I'm always like, as a leader, how do I wear that responsibility? How do I create that? How do I create an atmosphere where that happens? I gotta be vulnerable, I gotta be open. I gotta be open to intimacy. I gotta help these dudes with every aspect of their life, football and otherwise. I gotta let them see me, my successes, my failures, everything. Like, that's the only way.
That's what it is.
Jon, you know this. In construction, we love talking about how it's a relationship business. It's a relationship business, Bradley. Got to keep that in mind. I know. Life, everything is relationships. And that's exactly what he says here. He says, but like, that's relationships. That's life. Somebody's got to be all in for everybody to be all in. So when you're in a position of leadership, man, you should own the component of that, right? And he's talking about going first. I will speak from my experience in the construction industry from the age of 14 on. Vulnerability, intimacy, these are not words that are brought about very often. And then what stood out to me is just the counterintuitive nature of this is what he's talking about. How do you have 17 consecutive years when you're a rookie head coach of winning football? He's going to say part of it is just all about relationships, vulnerability, and intimacy. What stood out to you with that?
For me, if you want to be a good leader and build trust, it's got to be vulnerability-based trust. Predictive trust, this is Patrick Lynch Jr. talks about, is like predictive trust is saying, I predict based on past behaviors that Bradley's going to say something crazy, or this person's going to be late to the meeting, or this person's going to get upset when something doesn't go their way, or whatever. That's predictive trust. That's just based on history. Vulnerability-based trust is where you really build relationships and build trust. And it's saying things like, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. You know more than me about this. I need your help. Like, those are things that vulnerable people don't say. But when you do that and you invite them into the process to be able to say, look, I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, but I'm in a position of authority and influence here. We're going to go this way together. Then that's when you start getting that vulnerability in return. And that builds that intimacy. Because if I'm the only one being vulnerable, then it's not creating intimacy. And if I'm not and nobody else is going to either, then you're never going to get to that place where you have that full levels of trust. And so you can see it in the way that they play together, in the way that they build the team, in the way that they win. Because even with Kenny Pickett, that I'm going to keep picking on, like even with Kenny Pickett, they won games. You build that trust, that vulnerability-based trust, and you have intimacy within the team, you're going to win in the hardest of circumstances. And when the circumstances get the hardest is when you need that, right? I mean, it's when the market's not blowing and going that you've built that trust and built that vulnerability. That's when, again, the leader needs to go first and needs to go the most. That's when you say, as a leader, is like, hey, times are getting tough. I'm cutting my pay first. Because if I'm going to ask you guys to make cuts and make sacrificial things, I'm not going to ask you to do something I'm not willing to do for myself. And if we really want to have the best team to make it through this, I'm going to be the one that goes first. And you just don't see that as much as I believe that you should in those scenarios.
Yeah, he even just said it. He says, I got to go first. I'm going to be open, knowing that not everyone is going to want that relationship with me, and that's okay, but I want them to know I'm open to it. And I'll just read this line and you just riff off of it, because you can't do ordinary stuff, man, and expect unique results. I love this. That don't make sense. We can't have ordinary relationships. I coach, you play, do this, good job, bad job, and expect, like, at the end of our journey, the confetti will be raining down. That's not how it works.
I mean, that ties all the way, circle back to the seeking discomfort. Is it's going to take extraordinary effort and extraordinary measures to do extraordinary things. And if you think that you're going to stay comfortable and you're going to win championships, and if you think you're going to stay comfortable and have excellent cultures, and if you think you're going to stay comfortable and have exceptional results, it's just not going to happen. You have to do unique things that people are unwilling to do and go places people are unwilling to go to create results that people are unable to get.
There's a recent person that you were very close with. You introduced this individual to me, and I got to speak to him a couple times and had a tragic passing of Jon Ruhlin, and his book we've talked about on the show. I have gifted, several dozen copies of Giftology, which I think was a gift and a whole mindset. But very unexpectedly, at the age of 44, Jon Ruhlin passed away, and wanted to kind of give you the floor to give a little context to who he was and how he made an impact on your life.
Well, thank you. Jon Ruhlin was a close friend of mine, and he passed away recently, unexpectedly, from a health complication. Leaves behind his wife, Lindsay, and his 4 girls, ages 4 to 13. It's just a heartbreaking thing. And this is with the Mike Tomlin, how do you create relationships? How do you have authenticity and vulnerability? I mean, Jon was a master at that. What he did through Giftology was create gifting opportunities that create enduring relationships that are above and beyond. Giving somebody a little tchotchke or something with my name on it or something. I mean, he talked about doing the most you can possibly do and doing it for the inner circle of the people that you're trying to impact. And so giving a gift to somebody of a box that has knives on them with the family name, and whether it's lyrics or scripture or whatever it is that's important to that person and what those interactions mean. My relationship with so many of the people that are super important to me are deeper because of what Jon has helped teach me and lead me to do. And so what he taught, he also did. And he was as good of a friend as you could have ever asked for. Talked to him just a few weeks before he passed, and he was always super interested in what's going on with me. What was going on with my wife? What's going on with my kids? What's going on with my friends? Authentically, vulnerably, and I'm going to miss him a lot. He was a good friend, and he was a good man, and the world needs more Jon Ruhlins.
Thank you for listening. Thank you, Mr. Jon Vaughn, for returning here. If you did get value from this episode, please do 2 small things: rate and review on whatever podcast player you are listening to. That means more to us than you know, and that's going to help us grow our audience and bring our construction community closer together so we can build safer, more productively, and more profitably. And the second thing is share this with your friends, especially if they are Steelers fans. Quite frankly, if they're Ravens fans. If they hate the Steelers, that's fine too. Really thought this was a masterclass. So your network looks to people like you, try to figure out what they should be investing their limited time and attention on. So feel free to share that. So Jon, we're going to close out like we always do before this final segment of Mike Tomlin that's going to give us all pumped and ready to run through walls like the Mr. Kool-Aid Man. We close out our episode, every episode, with our leadership mantra. Do you know what it is? And if you do, can you take it home?
You are owed nothing. Deliver value first.
Make it a great week.
This new year, this new team, the way that athletes has changed and you have adapted, now starting without Ben. This current team and going forward, who does Mike Tomlin have to be and what does he have left to prove?
I need to be what this 2022 team needs me to be. That's leadership, right? And so, and it doesn't mean be unauthentic. It doesn't mean not be myself. But I better be sensitive to the needs of the group and I better work to meet them. And that's what I mean when I say I better be what they need me to be. And so it's going to be different things at different times, man, and I'm open to that. Part of coming ready, like I talk about coming ready and coming in the spirit in which I come, is just that. Because day to day, I don't know what they need me to be. I better have my ear to the ground. I better get a feel for it. I think that's one of the reasons why I established like the routine that I do, right? You ever notice like there's a certain point in the morning where I'm walking around on the first floor with a cup of coffee? I come in early, I get all my necessary business out of the way because I want to get a feel for the group as they come into the building. That gives me a directive in terms of what maybe I need to be for them that day. And so how the hell am I going to get a feel for that if I'm upstairs hiding behind my desk or something to that nature? So I've established little routines that provide me the information that I need to be that. I'm excited about being that. I don't know what that is this year. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I promise you I'm going to be ready. And I ain't talking trash. I'm not. I promise you I'm going to be ready.